brief introduction to myself here. So I'm Andrew Schall. I'm a Principal Researcher and Director of Schall Interactive. We're a Miami-based UX research firm with offices down here as well as up in New York. I co-authored a book on eye tracking with Jen Bergstrom, who's at Facebook. So it's a great book. If you're interested in hearing more about it, I'll try to mention it towards the end. I also am a founder for UX+DEV South Florida. So just a quick plug for that. So UX+DEV is a group for everyone involved in user experience, whether you're a researcher, designer, developer. It's a community that is just on its way up now. So if you're interested, go to UX+DEV SF.org. You can sign up to be a member. It's free, and you'll hear about some of our exciting upcoming events for this coming year. So eye tracking is a passion of mine, and I want to give you just kind of a super brief history so you can kind of appreciate the technology we have today. So in the 1950s, eye trackers looked like this, and actually this predates the computer, so keep that in mind. They were pretty complicated devices, and then even if you fast forward to more modern day eye trackers, they still resemble kind of more like medieval torture devices that you want to use in like a UX research lab or actually put on people. So we've come a really long way in eye tracking. Fast forward to today, people look happy in this case using the computer. The eye tracker actually in this case is baked into the computer monitor itself. So it allows us to really understand people's user experiences without the cumbersome feeling of all the technology. And this is just one example of eye tracker. I mean, there are more mobile-based eye trackers. We can connect the eye tracker to any kind of device, whether it's a laptop, a mobile device, a tablet. We even actually have to go into the field with pretty cool technology. These are eye tracker glasses. So people wear those. Unfortunately, they're up in New York. I couldn't bring them this week, but that's what they look like. And that's really a whole new area of eye tracking where you really are able to track in the field. So we do, I'll tell you some stories about it. I mean, we take these glasses out into the real world, into coffee shops, into stores, where people are actually using their mobile devices, not just in a UX lab. So I'll talk more about that. But first, before we kind of dig too deep in the eye tracking stuff, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So some really basic eye tracking terminology. You can impress your friends at home with these. A fixation is something where someone is looking at something at one moment in time. So it's that one moment where they're looking, how long they're staring at that one moment. A saccade or saccade is basically movement from one point to the next. And your eye moves, you'll see an example, your eye moves really fast all the time. So there's a lot of these movements going on. And the entire movement of your eye in a given period of time is what we call scan path. So you'll see in a few slides, you'll see what I mean by scan path. You'll see a lot of lines that look like spaghetti with a lot of dots, like kind of connected dot seeing kind of thing. And that basically gives us a really good understanding of where the eye is and what it's looking at. So I have a quick little example here, just to kind of wrap your head around this. So let's say you have a website, you're doing some eye tracking. The way the computer thinks of this is basically a grid system. It's basically plotting like connected dots. It's plotting every place a person looks, how long they're looking at it, and it plots that over a period of time to kind of give you these scan paths. So one point to the next, and that really gives us a really good sense of where the eye is going. Where's the eye traveling? Is it going back over the course of what we just looked at? Are they staring at something for a really long time? And that's really what eye tracking does. It's actually not more complicated than that. It tells us what they're looking at, and when, and for how long. That's about it. It doesn't really do anything else. But that alone is an incredibly powerful piece of information for designers and hopefully for developers to understand, to understand visual attention. Can eye trackers read minds? Anyone think that that's true? No? Okay, so I didn't fool you. It can't read minds, but it can give us a really good sense of people's insights, though, and what they're interested in, and some motivations behind that. We can infer a lot from eye tracking, but it's not a mind reading device. So we have Lady Gaga here, and I could poll all of you and ask you, so what do you looking at here? You know, what exactly is drawing your attention? And some of you might be very truthful. Some of you, you know, may gravitate towards certain areas. You know, so I can interview you, I can do a survey with you, and that's great. We do that, you know, UX tools all the time. We poll people all the time. But, you know, I want to truly get people's, you know, true understanding here. So we actually did this fun little exercise in our office. You know, we put it in front of a few people to see what would happen. And so this is an example we scan path, as I mentioned earlier, with the fixations now. Each color represents a different person. And what you can very quickly see is you see a lot of dots in certain areas. This is where the path people want to follow to map that experience. And it gives us a really good sense of, you know, where people gravitate their attention to. And again, I could ask people about this, but the eyes don't lie, as they say. So, and while we talked about voluntary versus involuntary stuff, I mean, you can control where your eyes go, and we all can look at certain things, but you're not constantly thinking about, I'm looking here now, I'm looking there. It is somewhat involuntary. It's a natural movement. You know, your eyes will gravitate towards whatever they typically will gravitate towards. I get this a lot. People will say, well, isn't eye tracking a waste of time? Or, you know, can't we just use regular UX methods? And it seems like a big deal to bottle all this equipment, and it's very time consuming. So be bold. Feel free. Raise your hand if you think eye tracking is a waste of time. I'm happy to address any skeptics in the audience. No skeptics? Okay, that's unusual. So what I always do is I portray it like this. So, you know, if you're doing surgery, you know, you could use a machete and hack up the patient, and you know, maybe if it's some sort of disease, you can cut it out of them, perhaps. Kind of a crude method. Really, as UX designers, people building for user experiences, you know, we really want the more scaffold approach. And really, I think the way UX design and development is these days is, you know, maybe 15 years ago we actually were doing a lot of this. The sites were horrible. We were just doing total redesigns from scratch, and the sites were just total crap. Got to redesign it, build it, you know. But now a lot of sites are just being, you know, we're constantly iterating. We're tweaking our designs. We're introducing new elements. You know, we're not starting from scratch, and that's really where eye tracking is the best, because it can pinpoint very accurately, you know, what they're looking at, what people are noticing, even on a second level. You know, if you catch their attention at that right moment, you know, maybe you're building some micro interactions. You know, it's a very quick, subtle thing, and the eye tracker is very sensitive. It measures on a millisecond level. We can really know if they notice that particular element we introduced or not. You know, and sometimes the elements we design these days or build are very subtle. You know, they're part of a much larger experience. You know, so yes, eye tracking can surely tell you, you know, did they completely miss that whole, you know, thing you spent 6 months building, you know, top right corner of the page. But it can give you much more subtle understandings of people's observations and engagements. This is more, I'd say, it's a little bit more of a machete, but it does show how one change in design can have a dramatic influence on people's eye movement behaviors. So this is an example I often use to illustrate that. So you have the cute baby here. You know, there's obviously a lot of fixations on it. It's a cute baby, people looking at it. You know, they're not really engaging though with the content. So if you're in marketing, you know, you'd be mortified and say it's totally ineffective. But one change in the design can have dramatic effects on the visual behavior here. So this is common behaviors that, you know, we're interested in what people look at.
Wow.
So just by orienting the baby in a completely different way, yes, they're still looking at the baby, sure, but they're actually looking to see what the baby is looking at. And it has a dramatic influence on the flow of that page. So same baby, different composition, same text, but a dramatic visual difference here. You know, we bring this into the web world. This is an old example, but I think it's still pretty relevant. So we're working with AAA on a complete redesign. There's a real machete approach here, but we did eye tracking as what we say is more of a diagnostic tool. It's like, what's going on here? You know, what are people naturally looking at? And we actually found through this exercise that they really weren't engaging with the content on the pages at all. They were, you know, you can see there's a little bit of attention just to see what was on the page. So they were typically just engaging with the navigation to see what was available, and they weren't really interested in all this stuff. The pages were too busy. They didn't really know what to pay attention to. So we used eye tracking a second time during the redesign process, and this was an iterative process. But now you can really see that we're really getting some hot areas in the center of the page. There's a clear visual hierarchy here with clear headings, skimmable information. It really had a big change. So eye tracking is kind of part of an iterative user-centered design process where we don't just do it once and say, well, that's a pretty neat map, and that's unfortunate they didn't look at this stuff. Oh well. We use it as the team is continually refining the design. This is more of the scalpel approach where we can continue to tweak this design a bit to exhibit the visual behaviors that we want. A lot of you probably use like web analytics, I'm sure, and that's great. That tells you what people are clicking on, what they're doing. But you really have no idea what they're actually looking at. They may actually be engaging with lots of stuff on your page, but they may not be clicking on it. So you can actually see here the X's here indicate where they clicked and also where they looked. And there is a direct correlation in many ways. But there's also content that people definitely read this content, but they decided not to click on it. And that's a really important finding right there. Learnability is an element from a usability kind of perspective where we may show people a website they may interact with it for a while, but their eye movements change over time. So even in a UX usability test session, this is what they looked at the beginning, and towards the end of the session, this is what they started to look at. You notice there's a big difference. What do you guys notice as a big difference here? What is the big shift? And what would you think? Why do you think? And just if you had to guess, why do you think there's a shift here? Yeah.
They got used to the boilerplate of the header and the image on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they recognize this. They recognize this boilerplate images or text that really wasn't very useful. So that whole area here. In this case, actually, there's a lot of news elements that the organization thought would be really useful to people. It turned out it's not. All the really useful stuff actually was down here. So people learned that over time, and they decided to ignore a lot of content that's frankly taking up almost more than half the page. This is an example of reading behavior, or I shouldn't actually say reading behavior, it's sort of skimming behavior. So this is an example where we use eye tracking as a tool to validate users' perceptions. So this is a session where we asked this woman to evaluate the content on this page, and she said the content was great. In actuality, you can see she's not actually really reading the content.
That's real time?
Skimming it. And we can't always trust what people say. The eyes tend not to lie, especially when it comes to content. So there's a lot of different ways of using eye tracking in UX. There's some more examples. So a lot of video game companies like EA and some of the other big ones, they do eye tracking studies to understand player engagement is often used. Could be used for in-game advertising, does some stuff like that. Form design is a really big one. Some of my earliest eye tracking studies were the design of forms. How do we optimize everything? I mean, it's not very sexy, but how do we optimize the placement of labels? Do we right align them, do we left align them? How wide should these field lengths be? It's not very exciting, but eye tracking is so powerful. It really can show us the actual scan patterns. And I learned that in many cases, people don't even read the labels themselves. They eyeball it. If I'm filling in an address and it looks like that's probably where you want to put my zip code based on the field length, they're not even looking at the actual label. They're going through so quickly, which can actually cause usability problems because if the field is longer or shorter than they actually expected, it can throw them off. So I do a lot of e-commerce stuff too. And this is a study I did actually for, you can see either handbags. I learned more about handbags than I needed to know. I learned about a hobo bag, and I thought they were joking about that. It's a real thing. But anyway. So the deal here, though, is that, again, it's that visual behavior that I can't get by asking someone. So we actually gave people gift cards in that particular study, and we said, here's $200, and buy something on this site. And we just let them do it, and we were able to watch that behavior. We were able to watch the eye scan patterns and really watch what they gravitate towards, and you can see a little bit of that here. But we went back to the design team then and gave them good guidance about how many items should you show in a row, how large should those images be to optimize people's scanning patterns. So, really, again, the scalpel technique is, they didn't have to totally throw out their whole way of doing it, but we're optimizing pages like this. And we actually did some prototype testing, so actually we had different versions of those pages to show people. My colleague Jen does a lot of age-related differences. So her thing is, the older population versus younger, they tend to focus on different things. So much older populations tend to gravitate towards the center of the screen. They don't look at a lot of periphery stuff. They're very, very focused, and they miss a lot of the important content. So a lot of other applications. Well, we're going to talk about mobile in a moment now, but just so you can get a sense of how eye tracking is used, throughout all of UX. But we're going to talk about mobile primarily. So mobile is all about context. You can see this woman is talking about the photo. She's on the subway right now, and she's using her phone. So if you're designing for someone like that, maybe you're designing a new mobile app, what are some of the contextual factors that might affect her experience using your app on a subway train? What's influencing her in her behaviors? So I'm in New York, I'm on the subway, a lot of stuff going on around me. Yep.
Yeah, the people around you and the motion of the subway too.
A lot of people around me. So what about the motion to influence her behaviors?
Well, she might get dizzy for a second in the midst of a turn, or she can tap the wrong place. If you've ever been in a subway, it can jerk around and move around, and she's maybe missed the button she was intended to press, and she presses something else. It happens to all of us. So that can influence literally what she's pressing. What are some of the other things that might influence her in this case?
She's underground, so the fourth key isn't working.
Yeah, so the internet, assuming she gets any at all, I think New York has in some of the stations now, but it's spotty internet. So she's using the app, and maybe she's playing a video, and it's buffering, and it's in the middle of downloading some content, and it stops, and so that totally can affect her experience. Yeah. Anything else?
Probably really loud.
Yeah, it's loud. Absolutely, definitely it's loud. So if there's an audio prompt or something that she's listening to, and she doesn't have headphones on, that's going to make it a lot harder, for sure. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, she's doing. We actually do lots of financial clients, and privacy is a big thing. So, she doesn't want people to see how much she has in her bank account. So maybe she's holding the phone a little away, or if we're designing content, maybe there's a privacy option to not show certain information. So you can get a sense. There's a lot going on in the environment she's in. Some of the other things would be that maybe she gets distracted. So maybe someone bumps into her, and she says, "Watch out!" And then she's then going back to her screen, or she's making sure that she doesn't miss her stop. So she's looking around and see, oh, my stop's next. She's looked away from the screen. So eye tracking helps us to understand those external factors as well as how they influence her eye movement behavior. When she gets distracted, when she gets distracted and resumes her mobile activities, where does she start looking at that point? These, as I mentioned earlier, these are the glasses that we use. We've done a lot of coffee shop testing, actually, different parts of the world, where an example I can give you is that, so a company we're working for was designing some new mobile payment options, where someone would be, like, let's say in a coffee shop, and they decide they want to buy a latte, they actually use their phone, like Apple Pay, to pay wirelessly with their phone. So it's not just about the device, it's about the device and going up to the payment station, and there's a whole interaction that happens there, and there are things that happen on the screen, and they have to look at the payment thing to make sure it went through, and it's a multi-step process. And if you're designing an experience, the eye tracker gives you that first-person field of view to understand exactly what's happening in your environment, what cues are happening on the phone, and what cues are happening when you're paying. And we get this, like I said, in a first-person view, which I'll show you in a moment. These are some of the things, like studies that we've done. So, like I said,
different coffee shop setups where, people are sitting at, a table here, sit with them. You can see, the first person view here. That ring is from the eye tracking. So that actually gives us, that circle so that they're in field of view at that given point in time of what they're looking at. But we can even do these in the store as well, so we have to be a completely visual experience. So what was the scenario here? So let's say that you're shopping and you're a savvy shopper and you do a lot of price shopping, price comparisons. So maybe you have the Amazon app on your phone and you want to see, is it cheaper on Amazon or is it cheaper just to buy right in the store? So that's a pretty common scenario, I think. So I have a video here just to kind of show you what that might be like, where someone's actually doing some price shopping with a particular item. They're looking at the app, they're looking back at the shelf. There are a lot of micro interactions that happen on the display. Some elements are actually pretty small on the phone, so it might be potentially difficult for her to see. For you. Okay, so just even that short clip, there are a lot of things happening. So anyone noticing anything right off the bat in terms of her eye movement behavior? No, it's okay. It's I'd be cheating if I see this about 50 times. So I've had a chance, I've had an advantage. But anything jump out at you? Anything with the, I know it's hard to sort of watch that here, but anything with the screen, anything with the interaction with the price tags, anything you notice? Even a small thing? Yep.
It seemed like the price, like she spent a long time looking at the price on the screen, almost like it wasn't big enough or dominant enough.
Definitely, absolutely. And you can tell that by how long she's staring at it and how many times she's looking at it.
See the eyes move. I was curious about what was on the rest of the screen, and I didn't see eyes move away from that one particular area.
You mean the
On the
area?
phone app.
Yeah, so there are three different stages. So there's like the scanning period, and then there's kind of like a little snapshot area, so to see like the full view of the products here. So there were a few things that were going on here. So this area down here, the information actually is pretty small down here. She was also looking actually at this image to verify visually that this was the same thing that the actual product. She actually looked at that for a long time and compared the product quite often. There was some micro interactions that were taking place, so she was waiting for that visual feedback for when it said, yeah, it locked onto the barcode and was able to read it. There was also a loading animation that happened down here while it was finding that product in their inventory. And all of it she was noticing, and that she's used this app many times before, so it's also important to know, an expert versus novice user. So if it was the very first time that she was thinking of this device, or this app rather, it might have been a very different experience. She may have been more, what we would typically look for is disorientation with eye tracking, which means that she just doesn't know where to look. Her eyes are all over the place. In Margaret, in this case, attention was actually quite deliberate. It really wasn't, she wasn't lost, she knew what she was looking for. But when we do studies like this, we often do them with a lot of novice people. And we can usually tell the eye trackers really fast whether they are looking at the right stuff or not. So that mobile payment situation I gave you earlier was all the novice users, none of which had even used mobile payments before, so the concept of that was kind of hard. So they did not know when to look at the pay station to indicate when the payment had gone through. They didn't know when to look at the phone. And the eye tracking, they really told us a lot about that. So, eye tracking sounds great. We showed you lots of examples. People usually say, well, what can I use eye tracking for? What is it suitable for? So it's not suitable for everything. If you're in the process of doing some pretty early designs, maybe you're still sketching, maybe you have some wireframes, maybe even have some like actual visual prompts that not even a clickable prototype, let's say, something like that. As a UX researcher, we do want to test things at all phases, but you're not going to want to do eye tracking at this stage. Any thoughts as to why that is? Why wouldn't we want to track these things?
Well, it's not really developed, and I think probably your eyes be all over the place trying to comprehend what you're looking at. It's not really fully fleshed out.
It's true. Because it's not really fleshed out, you may not know. Like for example, there's a lot of placeholder content here. So, why would I visually engage with this? X. That image goes here. So there's not a lot of motivation, frankly, for the user to look at these things. Any other thoughts about why this might be not only not useful for eye tracking, but potentially harmful or could give us the wrong results if we did eye tracking?
I think for myself, it's not near enough to the final experience that the customer would have, that you see all those notations on the side and you're trying to correlate those to what's drawn on screen. This is perfect, I think, for traditional usability study, but not for.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. We may or may not have the annotations when we present to the user, but the reality is, even if we're presenting this, which is pretty far along, any change you make potentially could have a dramatic influence on visual behavior. Anything. You could move a button from here to here. You could increase the font size by 20%. You could change the button example from gray to blue. That can have a dramatic influence as people's visual scan patterns, what they notice, how long they pay attention to something. And I know that because we've done a lot of iterative testing, we've done a lot of A/B testing to see just that one button, if it's like an add to bag button, if it's not what people expect it to be, or visually they didn't notice it, they're going to be looking everywhere on that page for that button, everywhere. So even this is a little misleading, or this is not going to have micro interactions. It's not going to necessarily have animations or true interactivity, and that can influence people's visual behaviors. And these things are really also, frankly, it's not worth your time because there's not stuff that's ready. There's no culling here. There's not much visual hierarchy. So as soon as you start actually building out the images and stuff, it's going to change so much. You don't want to waste your time with eye tracking. So we typically do eye tracking for something that it can still be a prototype, but it has to be a pretty fully functional prototype followed with eye tracking. This I had usually because people were excited at the end, and they realized, it costs $20,000 to buy an eye tracker, so we can't afford that. Good news is that there are companies like this now. So I tried. So you can all go to their website now and go buy one. I wish I got credit each time I show this. I probably should. But for $100, it's not a gimmick, by the way. I have one in my office. $100, you can get a fully working eye tracker that is almost as good as the $10,000 or $20,000 ones. If you have any interest in the topic, I do recommend you buy it. And they do give you an out-of-box, it's a beta though, where you can do the heat map stuff that I showed, you can get the scan path stuff. It's still pretty basic, but you can start playing around with it. It comes with a pretty robust SDK, so if you're a developer and you wanted to build a tool of your own, kind of do something more with the eye tracker, you totally can, and they encourage that. But for $100, you're getting, basically stuff that can do pretty much what I showed you today. if you're interested in really going further, they're even starting to bake these into laptops. So this is the world's first laptop that had a fully functional eye tracker in it. You can buy today. I don't think it's cheap. I mean, it's probably down $2,000 or $3,000, I think. But then the eye tracker is baked into this, so you don't have any external pieces like this. I get also a lot of questions from people about, well, can we use eye tracker for other things besides UX research? And the answer is yes. So companies are starting to figure out that maybe we can use this stuff as a new way of interacting with computers or devices. So if you heard about Samsung it wasn't a true eye tracker, but they were starting to integrate these kinds of things into like mobile devices. So picture if you're reading your email on your phone and I don't know, your groceries in your other hand. So unless you're going to use your nose, you have no way of interacting with that phone. But you still want to read that email. You can just be reading the email, and as you get to the bottom or towards the bottom of that email, it knows that your eyes are towards the bottom, and it can actually dynamically scroll up that email text for you. That's pretty handy, I think. Or if it knows that you're reading a Word document in theory, and it knows your eye movement behaviors, and it knows that you keep rereading that same sentence, you're getting stuck on a word. Maybe it quickly pops up a little mini definition for you. Maybe it anticipates you're not understanding that, and it provides clarification for you. They do use eye tracking as an aside a lot for disabled communities, so people who just have really very limited, almost no mobility, where they use the eye tracker as their mouse pointer. This stuff also, I usually freak people out this way, it also can be used for things that are a little scary, and that like they're building these into shopping areas where like you might be looking at a product on a shelf, and there's an eye tracker in the shelf and actually knows what product you're looking at, and then present you with some sort of offer based on that. So, so some people may go in stores like this eventually, not wanting to engage with the shelf, but so marketers can take advantage of this too. Google patented a process called you've heard like pay-per-click for web analytics and ads, but now they have pay-per-gaze, which is how many times can someone look at it, how long do they look at it, and ad vendors can get money that way. So so you're learning there's more to interactivity than just what people actually click on. So kind of in closing, I want to leave some time for some questions, but if you are interested in the topic, I'm a little biased, but it is a good book on eye tracking. It covers all the topics we talked about. So if you're interested in eye tracking, gaming, or e-commerce, or even motion design, all that stuff, it covers all that. We've had a lot of great people writing chapters, so you're not just hearing from me and Jen, it's from a lot of other leading experts. And if you're interested in really learning about this, I teach an eye tracking boot camp too, where you get me for 2 days and you learn everything about eye tracking and get a lot of hands-on experience with this stuff. So I really want to leave time for questions. So anything that's fair, people ask me some pretty hard questions about eye tracking, but I'm most happy to throw people out today. So any questions or thoughts? Yep.
So in Google Analytics, we get tons of data.
Sure.
How do you get some large sets of data for eye tracking?
Well, yes, it is. That's a big question, an important question, because web analytics, you can collect that from every customer or every user of your site. I mean, it's a huge amount of data. Eye tracking right now, most of this we collect in a lab, pretty much. So the sample sizes are much, much smaller. But I think they're, like with the laptop example, I mean, they're starting to take eye trackers into more technologies. There are companies that actually do webcam-based eye tracking. It's not totally accurate, it's not totally ready for prime time, but in theory, anyone with a webcam can be tracked. And one of the companies there has hundreds of thousands of data points from hundreds of thousands of people to know where they look on certain pages. So I think when you get to that point, you can ideally marry what they're doing with what they're looking at, and I think that would give us amazing insights into how people engage with these things. But we're not quite there yet, unfortunately. Anyone skeptical of this stuff? it's always good to know. For anyone, has anyone done the eye tracking before? Just to show of hands. Okay, so a few people now. So, what have your experiences been like?
We've been playing around with the iTribe
Oh, okay.
with our focus group. We found out that it was the software that came with it was very limited
Yes.
for our users. It doesn't have video support, all those sort of things. But yes, we grabbed the SDK and built an app for it and did some tracking, gaze charts, that sort of thing. But, do you have any recommendations of software that you use with the iTribe?
No, not with the iTribe, unfortunately. I've only used their beta software, which is quite limited. We just don't have the technologists in-house to kind of build things like that for us, unfortunately. But that's good to hear that you guys have already experimented with that, and it's I just thought they just haven't built enough out in the software yet to make it really that useful. We usually use like the Tobii software or SMI or manufacturers that produce the hardware as well as the software, and that usually works well for the kind of stuff we do, but it is very expensive.
I just a point. I noticed that there's a open source project called PyGaze, which some of you may have heard of, and it's not clear whether it supports that specific hardware, the iTribe tracker, but it'd be interesting, an interesting project to follow.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that I mean, iTribe is really just an example of where this is going. In that it's moving pretty fast. I mean, iTribe is getting as many of their eye trackers out there as they can. I think they just got a major funding boost, so I think they're going to be try to engage more with the consumer market with this stuff. So it's moving really fast. I mean, I think within just a few years, companies will have more laptops that have eye trackers built in. It probably won't be that long in the future where many of you sitting in the audience like this will have an eye tracker in your computer. So I think as designers and developers, it's something to be aware of, that this is not far off, and that, thinking about how you can use this in your work in terms of, both user research and evaluation, which is how we use it, but how eventually this can be used as a whole new, interaction medium for your users, and also for you as developers and designers, building in new ways of using the eye tracker to know kind of what your users do, what your users are doing, what they're seeing, what they're paying attention to. And I think there's a huge opportunity with technology. And it's not quite there yet.
I think compare iTribe to software for Hotjar, where you have videos of art and mouse tracks, where you still the users' movements.
Yeah.
How does that compare to like iTribe? What's it like to see?
Yeah, so just mentioning sort of click tracking or click, watching with the actual mouse movements, and that's done quite a bit too. And there have been studies to sort of see if there's a correlation between mouse movement and eye movement. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper to track mouse movements than do an eye tracking. There is a correlation, generally speaking, but it's not absolute. And there's actually a lot more data we're getting from the eye tracker than you're not getting with the mouse. I mean, the mouse is very deliberate in that, I do need to follow the eye with the mouse cursor, in fact, to know where I'm going to be pointing to, I can look at it. But you're not getting the whole picture. So I think mouse tracking alone is pretty useful. If you can't do eye tracking, it's worth looking at, but it's not giving you everything.
What was the biggest change in design that you've made in your career?
Sorry, the biggest challenge,
What was the biggest change in the design? The thing
Oh.
that made the biggest profound finding that you found
Yeah.
using eye tracking versus using conventional methods?
Yes. I don't know if it was-
Everything you explain is subtle, and it's optimizing it slightly bit better, slightly you have a bit more insight. But
Right.
what I'm trying to understand is this worth it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So give us an example of what you've used it. You sell this, so
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it's fair. But like I said earlier, I mean, it's it's not for the sort of, it's more scalpel than machete. So, so the eye tracker isn't great at, addressing monumental failures in the design, because honestly, there are other measurements that are more basic that can tell us that, really, truthfully. This is more like, I can't give you an example where, I mean, it was a very important finding that we learned only through eye tracking, was actually, we did a large-scale eye tracking study for angry birds. So we were actually watching eye behavior, and it was actually focused on mobile advertising. And the study actually was to compare one ad type versus another ad type, and there's a lot of money at stake. We did ultimately learn which ad type was more effective, but related to that, we actually learned better times to present an ad that are these susceptible moments when, from the eye tracker, we actually saw this is a really good place to put an ad because people are looking and there's not an ad, but we have a great opportunity now to put this ad here. So, and that was, I don't think we would have learned that without eye tracking, honestly. So, so that had a high impact. Honestly, though, we usually try to get a lot of designers, developers, product owners into the lab when we do eye tracking. And I'm totally honest with you, sometimes that's the only way to get them into the lab, is if they know eye tracking is going to be happening, they think it's really cool. If we can actually set up so they can watch the eye tracking in real time. And if you've just built something, you're a designer, it's pretty amazing to literally see how someone is evaluating your design. Not just what they're clicking on and doing or tapping, really to sort of get a sense of truly how they, like I said, it's not a mind-reading device, but it really does give us a feel for how someone is experiencing a product. So, so like I said, it does help to also bring the whole, product team together, I find, in ways that are just not quite as exciting as just a regular usability test. Although I've been told pizza is not, so there's ancillary benefits, frankly, that are not as tangible